So to moderate our following roundtable on venture capital partnerships, it's a great pleasure to welcome the Director of Strategic Collaborations and Medical Affairs at BMS. And this session will be followed at 6 with our discussions with Christian Perret and Thierry Breton. Luigi.
Can you hear me? Okay. Yep, seems so. So thank you very much. I'm very pleased to be introducing this session where we're going to have a conversation between our two speakers here around how Pharma and VC partner to support the Healthtech sector. So I'm pleased to have here in the room Laurent Arthaud from Bpifrance and Daniel Connell, who's connected from New Jersey, close to our global headquarters in Princeton. Welcome, Laurent. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you.
Can you hear us well, Daniel?
I can, yes. Thank you.
Great, great, great. So I will start by introducing the panelists, just to that we get to know them better. And Laurent, probably you don't need much of an introduction to this audience, but just reminding that Laurent started his career at the French Ministry of Finance and later became an advisor to the Prime Minister. He then joined Laurent Poulenc as Secretary General for the Corporate Research, and then he began his career in venture capital by founding the corporate fund of Aventis, Genavent. He then joined CDC Entreprise and later became General Manager for Life Science, Ecotechnology, and French Tech Acceleration Investment at Bpifrance. He's member of the boards of directors of several biotech companies, a member of the supervisory board of Kurma Life Science Partners, and on the startup studio Arthaud Bio. And he graduated from École Polytechnique and the French National School of Statistics and Administration. Thanks, Laurent, for joining. Daniel O'Connell is an executive director for equity and venture capital in the corporate development group at Bristol Squibb. Prior to joining BMS 1.5 years ago, he worked in the VC and private equity business at Arix Bioscience and OrbiMed in the New York City area. He also took responsibility in several boards in biotechs, and he received his medical degree and doctorate from the Tufts University School of Medicine in Boston, and then started his career at Arisa Pharmaceuticals, focusing on cardiovascular research. So welcome both again. So Daniel, let me start with you. Could you describe us at the high level how BMS approaches external innovation, and then a bit more specifically how you see venture capital funds as external partners to the company?
Thank you, Luigi. Appreciate the time to speak to everyone today. These are great questions in a very important area for innovation within BMS. Just as a high-level review, of course, BMS is a very large pharmaceutical company with over 40 billion in revenue and indications and products in several different therapeutic areas, from products such as Opdivo and Yervoy, Revlimid across both solid and liquid tumors, Eliquis and cardiovascular disease, Orencia and immunology, and several new products we've launched even just very recently, Abecma and cell therapy, in Revig, and others. We also have pipeline products that are targeting approval and commercial launch in the coming years. Mavacamten through our acquisition of Myocardia last year, and deucravacitinib in the immunology space with top-line data that we previewed earlier this year. But the role of BD really is to help ensure this pipeline of innovation continues. Here at BMS, we're very, very keen to stay focused on really innovative technologies, cutting-edge science, and therapeutics that are going to help patients in all sorts of indications in all stages of disease. To this end, we have over 50 products, 50 assets in earlier stage development, phase 1 and phase 2 items, progress of stages of development that we're hoping will eventually reach approval and commercial launch, so we can get these innovative technologies into the hands of patients. The role of BD is to continue that pipeline, to ensure that our earlier stage, early in clinical development as well as pre-IND pipeline is full and always targeting the best and most innovative developments in science. For this, we have good relationships with various venture funds across the US, across Europe, and across Asia. And the role that we play here is to ensure that we are seeing the most innovative work, the most cutting edge science, and really identifying the best opportunities to help bring products to patients. We look at this really through three lenses. The first is in our way that we support incubators. These, of course, are very, very early stage opportunities, connecting academic and early research centers to the very, very earliest of investment dollars, really running those critical experiments, even sometimes before companies are formed, but ensuring that we have a line of sight both to understand the latest innovation out of different universities and researchers, and also to help those university researchers ask questions that are maybe more commercial to help ensure that their products can actually reach patients one day. The second way we work with VCs is through direct investment. We at BMS do not have our own corporate venture arm, but we do take investment roles with other venture capitalists as co-investors to help build out a syndicate. These are often private companies earlier in development, but opportunities where we see great innovation that we want to get to know and see develop very early on. And also reciprocally, a way for BMS to contribute to the development of these products at these companies, whether it's through our knowledge on manufacturing, regulatory, IP, or basic science. We want to ensure that we are contributing to these companies as well as watching their development. We've recently made investments in companies in the space, also in Europe. Cardior recently announced a Series B raise. It's a German-based heart failure targeting company with some novel science that we're very excited about. And then also in your backyard in France, we recently made an investment into Tree Frog, a company developing a manufacturing platform for iPSCs, some really innovative stuff there. And then lastly, the third way that we work with venture capitalists is actually directly with the venture funds. This is what we consider sort of an indirect equity model, in which case we become a limited partner and LP in some venture funds. InnoBio2 was a recent example. We've made a few investments in funds across Europe, across Asia, and across the US to ensure that we are seeing the latest and greatest in new science, innovative technology, backed by solid management teams who can really execute in ways that will be really, really valuable to us in the future. So ultimately, the objective is to ensure that we are seeing things early, helping in ways that we can be helpful, and learning from companies as they develop their products so that our BD objectives can be met to help build out our IND pipeline in the future.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you for the very interesting overview, and actually, thanks for the transition, because you quoted InnoBio2 as a indirect equity model, and so I will turn it back to Laurent. So Laurent, could you maybe describe in a few words InnoBio and InnoBio2, the model, the fund, and also tell us from a venture capital perspective that you bring, what are your main expectations when a pharmaceutical company approaches you or even invests in your fund?
So, thank you, Luigi. InnoBio is a very unique venture capital fund in the world. So our LPs are only pharmaceutical companies. In InnoBio1, we had 9 pharmaceutical LPs and 7 for InnoBio2. So we are happy to welcome you, BMS. In fact, so now we are used to have collaborations with big pharmaceutical companies like yours. In fact, it begins when we have a first contact with a biotech company, so we need expertise, and it's one of the best part in the world for expertise. Is a pharmaceutical company, so we immediately have our network of specialists within the big pharmas to help us to understand what are this new science. Is that interested? Is that already worked? Or is that totally new? That's the first step. The second step is, of course, when we deep into the biotech and the business plans of the biotechs, we need some skills for clinical trials. We need some skills for regulatories, for market access. And it's probably also one of the best places in the world is to ask for big pharma to say, okay, what do you think about this market access? Can we have some price with this product? Where is the target? Where we have to position this product, this science? What is the best therapy to enter in? So that's very important. And you have all of the people within the pharmaceutical company to help us to do that. And of course, at the end of the process, we know that pharma companies are the companies that could acquire or biotech companies. So it's, of course, it's also our role to put everyone in the same room to discuss, to see if there's some love, some money love, of course, but some love.
Thank you, Laurent. Thank you. So, Daniel, I'm going to turn back to you again. So you started referencing a little bit about some recent deals in Europe and France. Can we go back to there a little bit more? So what have been some of the key drivers for BMS to invest in a fund like InnoBio that is French? I mean, InnoBio 1 was French focused, but InnoBio 2 is also focused on European investment. So what are some of the key drivers to be there for us?
Thanks, Luigi. This is an important question for us. As you know, BMS, of course, is a very large company. Most everybody knows our name. As I mentioned before, one of the key components we look for in collaborating with venture communities is access to really innovative science and novel technologies and very, very smart operators. So when we were reviewing the opportunity for InnoBio, we came to understand as our investments across the US, across Asia, across other parts of Europe, we wanted to ensure we had a lot of diversity of exposure. So we want to ensure that if something were really innovative that were coming up out of France, we had an opportunity to connect with it very early on. And although we have one or two other investments across the European continent as an LP in various funds, we hadn't had one dedicated to France. And so InnoBio 2 was a very interesting opportunity for us that way. Broadly speaking, though, the reason France was important to us is because really we've seen the quality of the science, the biotech sector itself growing over the last several years. You know, innovation is really starting to heat up there, and it's becoming more and more important for us to be early investors and have early access to the technology, the innovation that is coming out of the space. TreeFrog, as I mentioned earlier, is an investment we very recently made, and that is something we've not seen from any technology, any company that's been developed across the North American continent or across other geographies. So it's very important for us to have access to that in case there is something very important developing that we would otherwise miss. Of course, we have BMS employees and our French affiliate based in Paris, and so it's important for us to leverage this and the coordination, the collaboration between our French affiliates and opportunities in France, and as well as being very close to the InnoBio team is really critical. These relationships are very important. Honestly, there is also a lot of money floating around in biotech investing these days, and so it's important to build a strong relationship to ensure that it's not just our check that people want, but actually our expertise and our relationship. You know, we saw this specifically with InnoBio 2, not only an opportunity to increase that footprint in France and get access to the developing ecosystem, but we have a very good relationship. We've had a very solid collaboration with the team there. Formally, the relationship is relatively young. We've been an LP for about a year, but we've already seen some very interesting opportunities, some very high quality deal flow. And we're very, very excited for continuing that in the future. We're looking forward to seeing not only what France can develop broadly, but what InnoBio2 can bring to us going forward.
Thank you, Daniel. And thank you for mentioning the internal collaboration that we have between the local affiliate and the corporate, which is extremely important for us. Laurent, I would say, let's see this in a mirror. You were mentioning that you had already diversity of players in your first fund, and then other companies joining this second InnoBio. Is there anything specific? What's your perspective about when BMS joined the fund? Anything particular?
It's very important to have BMS on board, and we are very happy that you enter 1 year ago into InnoBio2. In fact, for different points. One point is clearly it's important for us to have an American partner, so we can discuss directly with you and Daniel for different points. So that's important to have this view of what remains or what is and what remains and will be remaining is the most important market in the world. So it's important to have this view. Secondly, BMS is one of the big actors with others also, but one of the big actors on the oncology side. And perhaps half of the startups, biotech startups we see nowadays are working on oncology products. So it's important to see what it's important for us to see what is important for you, what you are looking for, what you are not looking for, what is really high science, high interest, what is not. That's important for us to stratify, to know where you put these different companies in your models. That's very important for us to know what risk we can take and what opportunities we can bring. Of course, what is important is to have a personal relationship with the people. So it's good to have discussions with the big pharma, but at the end, if you it's Daniel, it's you, Luigi, who are the people with whom we are working. So it's very important to discuss with people, not to say, okay, I call BMS, but you have your network. I think it's important for us to know how you work and the reverse side, of course, and to know how we can work together and make the best product at the end. Of course, I think it's important for a French fund to have, in terms of institutional fund, it's important to have an American actor, and it's the reason why we are very happy that you are.
Thank you, Laurent. And certainly likewise from the relationship point of view, it's been an exciting, even if young, but very, very exciting and promising partnership. So I see we're 6 minutes from the end. Maybe we can start opening for questions in the room. Online questions. Okay, I'm reading. Do you think that the venture capital world is fully aligned with pharma? Or are there nuanced differences in the way they view healthcare opportunities in biotech? So is there alignment between pharma and biotech, or nuanced difference in the way they see healthcare opportunities in biotech? So maybe this is for the both of you. Who wants to give it a go first?
I can start. I think there is some alignment, but I think there is teaching on both sides. And actually, this really goes to the relationship and why these things are not simply solved with signing of a contract. As you said, Luigi and Laurent, there is important relationships that have to be built. It's not just you're calling BMS, but you're calling Daniel, you're calling Luigi. But I think the reason that's important is because people have different viewpoints, and one of the most important things I find from the venture community is the ability to look forward in time. You know, we have at BMS our 5 key therapeutic areas and our business development priorities, but we also understand that those can evolve over time. And so what may be our priority in 2021 may shift a little bit in 2025. By making investments alongside VCs in things that are very early today, we have the opportunity to see how they grow and evolve over the next 3, 4, 5 years, so that when we are ready to come to the table for an acquisition, a license, a deeper collaboration, we are prepared to do so because we've gotten ourselves thinking about what's coming down the road in the middle part of the decade or even later. And sometimes that's very, very difficult for a large organization like BMS, where we're very focused on the very near term, and sometimes, unfortunately, the longer term can be sacrificed because the near-term priorities are so important. But by working with the VC community, they help us look into the future, and they hear from us what we think will be important to us a few years down the road.
Oh, I agree with what Daniel is saying. I think what is important is to have the trends in mind. To know, or to try to know, or try to invent what could be the medical drugs in 2025, 2027, even 2030, and the way also of collaboration between the big pharma and the biotech company, which will change probably in the next years. And so it's important to discuss, to know in what we will invest now, and to be successful within 6-8 years. It's always very difficult if we come back to NASH products, for example. So there were trends a few years ago to work on NASH opportunity, but it's very crowded now. So it's interesting to discuss together and to anticipate what could or could not happen.
Okay, thanks both. Maybe we have time for last question. We have 2 minutes. Anyone from the audience? No? Okay, maybe just, you started also depicting this, but I was curious to know, and maybe this is probably the last point, maybe for both of you, how have you seen this in the recent years, this partnership mode between pharma and VC evolving, and where do you see this going? I mean, you started responding about this, but how do you see this relationship evolve over time, and what's your thinking for the future?
Again, I will start for this time. Again, it's a question of person. So it's a question of person. It's a question of people in different organizations to discuss together and to know what is feasible, what is not, and what could be feasible for venture funds and for big pharma companies. So we can invent many things. And so we are totally open for different new things, but we just have to discuss together freely as we try to do it.
Okay, so you see consolidating this relation. Daniel, would you like to add anything? We have 1 minute and a half, so we're sharp on time.
Yeah, I think it's it continues in the same spirit of what we said before. I mean, fundamentally, large pharma has evolved to be much more acquisitive, and so ensuring that there is interest in the opportunities that venture funds are putting forth is really going to be, from pharma, is going to be really key to make sure that acquisition model continues going into the future. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I'm sure some analysts have reviewed all the major commercial launches across the entire pharma industry and analyzed how many of them actually came from internal versus external. And I'm sure the trend only moves more in the external innovation model going forward. So the ability to have close relationship, but also push pharma into a direction that we may not always be comfortable is going to be a key part of those VC pharma relationships.
Okay. So thank you very much both for this great insight and also having this very optimistic view of the future. And thank you also for being so diligent, because we are 5 seconds from the end of the session. And so thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for participating.
Right. So in a couple of minutes, we will be welcoming Christian Perret and